welcome to another writing vlog. My name is Kayla. I'm a writer. I am currently working on the first draft of my high fantasy standalone project. It is tentatively called Project Geo, and my goal is to finish this book by the end of the year, possibly publish it. Theoretically, if I am able to finish it, and by finish I mean get through all of the rounds of revision, proofread, copy edit, all of that, basically get it to a finalized version that I'm happy with, then I'd like to think that I would be willing to publish it anyways. So the draft is currently sitting at 44,000 words, a little bit over 44,000 words, and we have entered the midpoint. I think that the midpoint is probably going to be 2 scenes, because the current scene that we're in, something kind of epic and wild is happening to the main character. Estelle has been whisked away in a metaphorical and physical sense, and she is about to be shown something that will raise the stakes for her and also give her a little bit of understanding of what's going on in this situation and in this world. This midpoint is also supposed to show her that she was wrong about an assumption that she had going into this journey. And once we get through the midpoint, I think that her stress is going to be quite a bit higher, because she is going to have come to the realization of kind of what's at stake through this, and it's a lot more than she initially thought, and in a lot more ways than she thought. So I already know what I want the midpoint to be. Like I said, I have outlined it already. I've already started writing it. I also actually got a little bit of inspiration this morning and wrote, I don't know, 400 words or so of a scene that's going to be like, or of a conversation rather, that's going to be within the Dark Night of the Soul between the love interest and Estelle. And I'm really excited for that because I feel like it showed me a little bit about Estelle's character and where she needs to start from and where she needs to get to by the end of the story in order to have a satisfying character arc, which is something that I was having a little bit of a struggle with at the beginning of the book, because I was feeling a little bit anxious that I didn't know fully where Estelle needed to get to. Like physically, I knew what the ending was going to look like. I knew what her goals were going to be, but I feel like emotionally I was lacking a little bit, and I trusted the process. I told myself I'm just going to keep discovery writing and hope that Estelle reveals herself throughout the book. And then that little snippet of a conversation came to me this morning, and I was like, this feels like it. Like this feels like the peak of her arc, or not the peak, but like the moment where she has to make that decision to fully change and become the character emotionally that I want her to be at the end of the book. And it just felt really good and really powerful to write. It's one of those moments where like the character is saying something and you're writing it and you're like feeling inspired while you're writing it because of what that character's saying. It was very motivational. So yeah, we're at 44,000 words. It is supposed to rain all day today. So my plan is to get stuff done around the house. I have to repot a couple of my plants. I'm trying to be a better plant mother lately. So yeah, I'm just gonna do some stuff around the house between writing sprints, and I'll probably go for a run in the rain because that sounds really nice, and I wanna make sure that I'm getting outside even when it's pouring rain and miserable. I've also updated my track bearer. So I've been the past 2 months, I think, I've joined the leaderboards that Brielle, who is Brielle Writes here on YouTube, has posted. She creates these like leaderboards, and you can kind of join the leaderboard and then set your goal for writing for the month based on like word count or time spent writing or whatever you want to use to track. And at the beginning of February, I actually was still tracking hours, just like I had been back in January. And I was doing that because I've just been trying to like avoid tracking word count too much. And then I was also working on the poetry collection, which tracking word count on a poetry project is not a good way to track progress in my opinion. Like it's just, there is really no progress when it comes to revising a poetry collection and trying to track word count for that. So yesterday I finalized a few things for the poetry collection, and I ordered a proof copy, which I'm very excited for. It should get here on Monday. But because of that, I have definitely set aside the poetry collection. It's pretty much done. I'm getting some friends to like read stuff because there's definitely some poems that I think need some tweaks, but I've just like become too close to it. And now that I've set that aside, I kind of actually felt the urge to switch to tracking word count. And I think the reason that that's helpful for me at this point in time is because I have so much of the rest of the story planned out. And as I continue writing and feel more and more flowy, I'm feeling less worry around the idea that I might be writing words for the sake of writing words without actually like contributing them in a good way to the story. And basically because I've done all this planning and I'm feeling so good about it, I have felt like the words that I have put into this draft, even when they're like massive word count days, have still been valuable words. And this is also stemming off the reminder that I'm trying to give myself as often as possible that I just need to get through the first draft. everything developmental, story-wise, character-wise, world building, I can build onto that. But I really, really want to get this first draft done and complete so that I have a complete manuscript to build off of and to go from. So with all of that being said, I have switched my goal for this month to be word count based instead of time based, because I don't know, for me at this point in my process, it just feels like that needs to be the focus of getting this first draft done. And it feels like that's what's going to motivate me the most right now. So I have set a goal for this month to write 30,000 words this month, but I will say I've already written, because the beginning of this month is when I did those like massive word days. So I've already got 12,253 words for the month so far. So really, if I'm being totally honest, my stretch goal is that I just finish the draft by the end of February. Let's get into the vlog. That was so much blabbing, but I just wanted to update on my plans and how things are going, and yeah, just like give you the updates on everything. Good morning. As you saw, we wrote close to 2,500 words yesterday. It was 2,400 and something. I played the song Test Flight from How to Train Your Dragon, which is one of my favorite like instrumental, fantasy, epic, exciting songs for me to listen to. Something that sometimes happens to me is when I'm writing a certain scene, a song will come on and it'll fit so perfectly with that scene that I'll just like put it on repeat so that I can just listen to it over and over again until the scene is done. So I did that yesterday, and I cannot tell you how happy it made me to listen to a song, one of my favorite songs from How to Train Your Dragon, on repeat while writing a scene. The energy that I got from that was just fantastic. And I'm also so excited to report that we are currently in the midpoint. That scene that I just finished writing that I was just talking about is pretty much most of the midpoint. However, we're kind of like when she is returning from that scene, and there's a couple things that need to be said by characters to kind of like finish raising the stakes. Like this has already raised the stakes for her a bit, and I think I've done an okay job of like sprinkling in traits and beliefs that other characters have leading up to this point that also contribute to the stakes being raised for her, because she's like heard those other characters talk about these things or share their feelings on these things, and she's kind of starting to like figure some stuff out. I'll be totally honest, I'm not sure if I've set it up as best as I can, but that's okay because it's a first draft and we can change things. But the point is just that those things are there. I can like rearrange them later if I need to. I'd say there's a little bit more that I need to write to kind of tie off this scene and get us into the second half of Act 2. But yeah, I'm so excited that I'm pretty much finishing the midpoint. Very, very exciting. The manuscript is currently sitting at 46,400 words. So mathematically, if I followed an outline structured in the way that I kind of like to structure it, which is like 25% Act 1, 50% Act 2, 25% Act 3, then that would mean, since we're at about 50%, that the total manuscript word count at the end of it will be about 90,000. Like I said, originally I was hoping to underwrite and hit around 80,000 for the manuscript, because then I can let it sit for a bit and then read through and do my revision plan for the developmental edits for draft 2. And it would just be a lot less words to have to deal with and a lot more of like a structural skeleton that I can add on to rather than having to like take away from or deal with an over excessive amount of words that I now need to like shift around and decide what to keep and what to get rid of. So I will say 46,000 words for the midpoint is obviously getting up there, because that would put me, if I wrote the same amount of words for the second half of the book as I did for the first, it would put me above 90,000 words. However, I think that my second half of Act 2 / my climax are almost always too short when I write them in the first draft. I think normally when I get to that point of a first draft, I have been, you know, flowing and writing tens of thousands of words. I'm not quite getting sick of it, but it is becoming like monotonous, if that makes sense. So, I mean, every time I write a book, it's different. However, my track record in the past with this sort of thing is that there will be less words in the second half of the book than there are in the first half of the book anyways. So fingers crossed it stays that way. If I have a final draft under 90,000, like in the upper 80,000 word range, I would be very happy with that. I think I'd still be happy as long as I keep it under 100,000, but I really don't want it to be that high because I just don't want to have to deal with that during the process of draft 2. And I'm trying really hard to adapt to this new process and like really give this new process and this plan for underwriting my best shot, because I just want to see if it really works for me, and I think I have to like give it my all and really give it due diligence in order to see if it's going to work for me. So that's where we're at. It's a beautiful Sunday. I think we're going to get some clear skies, which I'm very excited about, because yesterday I was just running in the pouring rain, which is magical in its own right, but I just like the sun. My goal today is that I would really like to finish the midpoint and get into the second half of Act 2. I have a feeling I'll probably check in once I've done some more writing and actually get through the rest of the midpoint and like tie that off. But I do have a feeling that I'm gonna want to take a little tiny step back once I finish the midpoint and just review everything that I've written down for Act 2 so far, for the second half of Act 2 at least. Like I said, I took everything from the outline that I had, which was pretty much everything leading up to the Dark Night of the Soul, and I added all of those plot points into the chapters that I already have in the manuscript. So I have like point form notes for the coming chapters, basically up until the Dark Night of the Soul. So I have all of that in there, which is great. But obviously I've written multiple chapters and multiple different things since I transferred that outline into the actual manuscript document. So because of that, I kind of just want to do like a little, maybe 30-minute review and just make sure that all of the stuff that I outlined moving forward still makes sense based on what I've already written, because I have taken the liberty to do a bit of discovery writing, obviously, first draft, because as we have seen, when I actually take the time to sit down and reorganize and review the outline once I'm like moving on to another part of the draft, it seems to help with the flow of the words, and it seems to help me avoid writer's block. So we're learning about ourselves and our writing process always, and it's going well. You know what, my plan this morning was to just get right into writing, but I've just realized, or writing Project Geo, but I've just realized that I need to write the blurb for my poetry collection. But I'm going to be applying to have the collection in a cafe that's local, and that application closes in the next couple of days. So I really actually need to write the blurb and apply to that before they close. So I think I'd just like to get that out of the way today. So far today, I have written 857 words, and that crosses the 15,000 word mark for this month. So my goal for this month is to write 30,000 words. We've crossed the 50% mark, so I've written over 15,000, and that was enough to get me to the end of the midpoint. So we finished the midpoint. We're officially in the second half of Act 2. This is the time when I actually do think that I'm going to take a step back and just kind of take some time to review what I have for this part of Act 2, make sure it still makes sense, add any extra details that I think I need to add based on what I've written up to this point and what has changed. But for now, as you can probably tell, it's beautiful and sunny outside, and I need to take advantage of the sunny days when they come. So I'm gonna head outside for a bit, maybe go to some high lines, maybe go for a swim in the river. That sounds fantastic. And just like spend some time outside, because it still gets dark at like 5 p.m., which means that I still have like 4 hours after it gets dark and before I go to bed for me to be working on writing. And I'm gonna bring my notebook with me just in case I have some ideas and I wanna like sit and do some brainstorming while I'm out. But yeah, so far so good. This is a good weekend. Good morning. It is nearly 7 a.m. I've just finished 20 minutes or so of kind of reviewing the chapters that I had, / reviewing the outline, I guess, because basically now the chapters that I have outlined for in the manuscript document is the rest of the outline that I had. So a couple things happened while I was doing that. First of all, I realized that I actually outlined quite a bit. So I'm still feeling pretty good about the amount that I have outlined and kind of like where I want to get to before the Dark Night of the Soul. As I was doing that, I was also going through and estimating how many words I was going to be using in order to write each of those scenes that I had outlined, which is like, I'm not even gonna lie, arbitrary, really. Like there's no way for me to, I can give it my best shot based on, like, for example, a scene that's coming up in the next few chapters. I know it's going to be quite a bit longer. So I estimated that one to be closer to like 3,000 or 4,000 words because I just have a clearer idea of what's going to happen in that scene. And there are a couple of extra things that need to happen. So I know that one's going to be a lot longer. But then there's a couple of them where I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to estimate this is going to be about 1,200 words, for example, just to try and get an idea based off what I know is going to be happening in those scenes. So I went through and then I kind of added up all of my estimations leading up to the Dark Night of the Soul, and I think that it's going to be around 13,000 words for me to get from where I am right now, which is coming off of the midpoint, and then to the beginning of the Dark Night of the Soul. So this is like not really including any of the midpoint or any of the Dark Night of the Soul scenes. This is kind of just that in between, and adding that to the total that I currently have, which is just over 47,000. It looks like once we get into the Dark Night of the Soul, we're going to be sitting just over 60,000 words, which I think makes sense theoretically, because if we do the math on it, 75% of 80,000 is pretty much exactly 60k, so that lines up. Like I said, these are estimates, and it's very difficult for me to actually estimate how long a scene is going to take. I'm sure that there are a couple scenes that I have underestimated, so even if it's above like 65,000, maybe closer to 70, I think that this is still making sense, which is good because I was actually worried that I was gonna have to try and come up with some more scenes and try and add some more in the second act because, like I mentioned in the previous clip, I do have a habit of writing less in the second half of Act 2 than I do in like the first half of the book. And that's just because it usually gets to a point where I haven't planned everything and I'm like maybe scrambling a bit, and I'm also struggling with Act 2, which is my struggle point. So in the past, my expectation has been that that particular chunk of the story is going to be less anyways. So I'm actually feeling really excited and happy that I've kind of like gone through and done these calculations and reviewed the next chapters that I have coming up, because it actually feels like I'm in a pretty good spot and it feels like I've outlined it pretty well, to be honest. Like even going through the next few things that happen, I don't see anything that's like glaringly missing. Again, we are still discovery writing. We have very few details for each of those things that need to happen beyond the overarching part of the story that they need to be serving. So something could pop up, but the nice thing about aiming to underwrite for me apparently is that it actually gives me the space when I start to write more and overwrite. So it's kind of interesting because I've been trying to restrict and limit myself via the goal of underwriting. And it's kind of nice because by doing so, it feels like it actually does give me more space to discovery write, because I know that I'm underwriting and therefore I actually have like buffer space here and there when I'm discovery writing and I come across something that I'm really excited about and I really want to dive deeper into, because I'm like, well, this is okay. Like I've got an extra 20,000 words to use as buffer space and to use as discovery writing. So that's been an unexpected benefit of the like goal of underwriting for this draft. It doesn't really contribute to the goal of underwriting in the sense that I'm still gonna be hitting like over 90,000 words for the draft probably, so it doesn't really help with the part of the goal that was focused around not having as much to sift through in draft 2. But I think that that is a warranted trade-off that I'm very, very willing to make. Like I'm very, very happy to have the buffer space to discovery write when that feels right for me in draft 1, even if that adds to the content that I'm gonna have to work through when I am doing developmental edits in draft 2. So that's where we're at this morning. I have also made a note for myself that I need to go back and write a scene where Estelle, the main character, is going to overhear the general, the military general that they're traveling with, as well as the royal advisor that they're traveling with. She needs to overhear them talking about basically this old not that old, but like this mission from a decade or so ago that was going on, because I've realized that in order to pick up the pace a little bit and raise the stakes for her when we get closer to the Dark Night of the Soul, she needs to at least have like an idea of this mission and that it exists, but she doesn't need to know like what it is at this point. So basically she just needs to overhear them talking about it, because a few scenes from now or a few more chapters from now, she is going to hear them discuss what that mission actually was, and she's going to connect some dots and be like, oh shoot, this is not good. So my plan now is to dive in and write that scene quickly, because that's like either just before the midpoint or like kind of during the midpoint. So I just need to get that scene in and get that conversation in so that she can overhear it. I don't think that'll take too long, so I'll just do like a 15-20 minute sprint. And then since I've gone through, I've added any details, I've adjusted things so far leading up to the Dark Night of the Soul, which actually didn't require much. I feel like I covered all of my bases fairly well. Okay, anyways, let's write this scene and get this finished so we can completely finish the midpoint and just tie it off with a bow. I just finished writing the scene that fully officially completes the midpoint. So it's kind of made up of two scenes, I would say. There's like one main scene that happens and then a couple, like a follow-up scene that kind of needs to like set things in place. And I think my goal with it is to like show the reader what is now at stake and like how those stakes have been raised, and to also make it very clear to Estelle that the stakes have been raised and that things are a bit more serious than she thought they were, actually quite a bit more serious. So I finished writing that scene. I've written, I think it's like 900 words or so today. Like I mentioned, I switched from tracking hours for the month to tracking words for the month, just to try and keep the momentum going with this first draft. So I think that I only really need to write around 700 words a day to complete the goal that I've set for the month, which is 30,000 words. But I am, while I'm flowing and feeling good about it, which I still am, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm just gonna run with the momentum, go with the flow while it's here, take full advantage of it, get as much done as I possibly can, because I know that there are definitely gonna be days where I'm not feeling as up to writing as much as I have been. So yeah, I'm at the point in the story where the midpoint is complete. I've gotten into the second half of Act 2, which is so exciting. And like I mentioned, I've gone through and done a review of everything leading up to the Dark Night of the Soul. I've added anything that needs to be added. I've tweaked things where needed. And I think it's really been helpful to take those occasional pauses here and there, like I have been, to like review the outline again and make any changes necessary. I think that's been working really, really well for me. It's almost feeling like a couple weeks ago I created more of an outline when I felt like I was getting a bit lost and a bit stuck. And now it feels like with that outline, I'm also doing like a headlight outlining method, which is interesting because it feels like I do have the outline and I know what's supposed to happen, but every once in a while I'll stop and like use the headlight method, which is where you kind of just outline the next few chapters that you can see ahead of you. So it's like I'll still be following that outline, but I'll be discovery writing, and so every once in a while I'll take a pause and I'll use the headlight method to outline the next few chapters and to like tweak them or add any details that I think I need to add, and just like give them a bit more detail and a bit more structure, but like just the next few chapters ahead of me, if that makes sense. So still following the outline, just kind of adjusting it as I go to keep it as aligned as possible with the story, which is really nice because in the past I've like made outlines before and then completely gone off the rails, and then the outline is kind of useless at the end of the day. So it's kind of nice to actually be like drafting while working with the outline and like keeping things aligned so that I know what I'm working towards. So yeah, that's where we're at. The manuscript is currently sitting at, I think, 48,400 words or something like that. So we're getting close to 50K. We have passed the midpoint and I'm feeling good. I just wanted to say, if you've been enjoying my vlogs or if you've been watching, I would really love if you could like the videos and subscribe. Come and join the community that we've built over here on YouTube. I have really been enjoying vlogging lately, as you might have noticed. So, but I'm gonna finish this vlog here and start another one in a few days, or maybe today, I don't know. I'm gonna keep vlogging, I think, because I've been enjoying it. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.